What's up, my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters? Like I said, YouTube family, people stopping by, etc. Back on here once again to share information, of course, that's relevant to everyday life in the world. And wanted to share another video. Our last one I posted was, of course, about who Savior is. But this one right here is more a little bit about current events of the world, politics, etc. And the reason I speak on it because it involves prophecy within the scriptures. If it didn't involve prophecy in the scriptures, I very much wouldn't pay it too much mind. But since the revelations instead of dropping and instead of coming, I figure, to do my part and be a trumpet, be a watchman to sound the trumpet and, you know, be a Paul Revere and give the warning. So but anywho, where I want to start. Now this one right here is about America probably having no choice but to go to war with Iran. And some, like I said, revelation came to me about that. And the reason I say this is because, let's see where to start. Okay, Bob, our gas prices starting to soar back up again. Gas prices starting to soar back up again because, well, for one reason, towards the summer or the spring, you know, people in this country or Congress in this country expect people to do a little more traveling when it's warm. People do less traveling in the winter because possible road freezing up or ice on the road, etc. So people not gonna spend that much money on gas. People gonna spend an average amount of money on gas regardless, getting back and forth to work, but people spend a little more or tend to spend a little more in the spring or the summertime because more travel. So pretty days outside, sunny and nice, people gonna want to go places. But still, last year when it was pretty and sunny, people didn't travel as much, but some still travel. So there's not a guarantee that a bulk of America's population are gonna want to travel when it's spring and pretty outside and sunny in the summer. So just want to I guess start it off from that point. So there's one reason, gradual hike is, hey, we can probably make more money, make more of a profit. The other reason is because America is starting to tap into the oil reserves. This country has oil reserves, so for emergencies only, pretty much. So if we starting to run low as far as with the buying and selling from the people who this country buys the oil from, then we can tap back, or this country can tap back into its own reserves and use barrels in their own personal reserves, kind of like a savings or something for oil. It's like I really don't want to touch my savings unless I necessarily have to. Where it's the same way when it comes to the oil. It's like we really don't want to touch these reserves unless we really have to, because we don't want to use up our oil. Then what? We run dry on our oil, and prices really start to soar and go up sky high because really can't afford to waste oil. But if really can't afford to waste oil, I mean, as far as their product viewpoint, how they looking at it. So I did some calculations. Revelation. Let me get a pen. I'm gonna try to do. I should have had this prepared, but I'm going at random here. Okay. Here's the reason, the real reason why gas prices are extremely high, and they can't go back down to like $1 and some a gallon anymore. You see, the lowest that it got down to a gallon is like maybe 269, 250. That's probably the lowest we done seen in a long time. But when it's like $1.69, $1.50 and all that, when it was that low, then it wasn't too much of a problem as far as with the oil consumption. But now, since it's a whole lot more oil consumption, and it started with the GM bailout, that right there triggered something. That set off a light bulb, and not only set off a light bulb to some, but it set off revelation to me when pondering and meditating from the great wise ones above. Let me show you the revelation. Okay, I'm gonna do like a rough estimate. I'm gonna go like even numbers. Let's say every year this country manufactures 20,000 new vehicles a year. We just gonna use a small number. It's actually more than that because 20,000 new vehicles, that's probably like 6 car lots. But let's just say that number. We're gonna go with a small number. 20,000 vehicles a year this country manufactures. Okay, so 20,000 times 5. You may say, why are you doing 5? Let's see, 10, 5 times 2, 10. Okay, 100,000. I mean, I could have done it in my head, but I'm just right. Okay, 20,000 vehicles manufactured a year. Let's follow me here, folks. Of course, y'all follow and listen. But 20,000 vehicles manufactured a year. Each individual vehicle requires an average of 5 quarts in oil for a car. Requires an average of 5 quarts. SUVs, roughly around 6, but on average, 5. So we're going to stick with that. So 20,000 vehicles times 5, this is 5 quarts of vehicle, leaves 100,000. That's 100,000 quarts of oil a year. 100,000 quarts. So let's say, now this is manufacturing alone, okay? So 100,000 quarts a year. So 100,000, okay, let me do some more calculating here. 2, 3, just a sec, folks. 4, 5, 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, some idea additional 0. Alright. We got 100,000 times 10. Alright? Of course, that's an easy number to calculate again, but I'm just, doing the figures. 100,000 times 10 this is 100,000 quarts of oil times 10 in the past 10 years. So 100,000 quarts of oil in the past 10 years. So 1,000,000 quarts of oil. So this is 1,000,000 quarts of oil going off for the past 10 years, 20,000 vehicles being manufactured a year. So for the past 10 years was what I calculated, 20,000 vehicles times 5 quarts a gallon. I said 5 quarts a gallon. 5 quarts a vehicle. So 5 quarts a vehicle leaving 100,000 quarts a year based off manufacturing 20,000 vehicles a year. So 100,000 vehicles, 100,000 quarts times 10 going off the past 10 years that this country, going out the past 10 years of 100,000 quarts of oil based off 20,000 a year being manufactured leads to 1,000,000 quarts of oil. 1,000,000 quarts. Now this is based off 20,000 a year. 20,000 vehicles being manufactured a year. But America's population is like what, over 300 million? So imagine, let me see, because this is manufactured, so we gonna go with this number, but let's say 100 million. Wow, it's gonna be a big number here. Alright, 100 million vehicles. 100 million times 5. Okay? 100 million times 5, easy. 500 million quarts of oil a year. Now this is based off 100 million vehicles in operation every year. Every year at least 100 million vehicles in operation. Because you got 100 million, over 300 million population. But we gonna go off the number over 100 million vehicles in operation. Buses, trains, planes, all sorts of automobiles, motorcycles. This is 500 million quarts a year. Now this is doing a rough estimate off 100 million vehicles in operation every year. 500 million quarts a year. So by America manufacturing so many new vehicles that people cannot afford, you wasting roughly, I based it off 20,000, but 50,000, there's roughly 250,000 quarts a year that this country is wasting off series of vehicles that are not selling because somebody that bought a model they like, they probably still riding a '08 or '05 or some '86s or some '98s that's that lasted them about 10-15 years. So steady manufacturing, steady bringing out more and more vehicles, you wasting roughly about 250,000 quarts a year. Because it's really probably like 100,000. So let's go off that, right? That's like 100,000. We're going to go off that because it's really more than that. Being manufactured a year times 5, that would be 500,000 quarts a year. 500,000 quarts a year. And this is off the manufacturing of new vehicles based off 100,000 a year. So you manufacture 100,000 new vehicles a year, 5 quarts of oil a piece on average. There's 500,000 quarts of oil a year. 100 million vehicles in operation each year. There's 500 million quarts of oil a year on vehicles operating every day. But 500,000 quarts based off 100,000 vehicles being manufactured every year being wasted by not selling. So you go into a parking lot or a car lot that's got '05s that hadn't sold, '05 series of different model cars that hadn't sold, '06 of series of different model cars that hadn't sold. But here it is, you bringing out 11s and 12s and probably soon at the end of this year 13s. So you steady manufacturing vehicles, steady using up to 500,000 quarts, additional quarts of oil that's remaining stationary in order to assemble the vehicle, because of course they put oil in it. They don't put oil in the car and then let you drive off with it. It already has oil for them test driving and etc. and them driving it to the car lots. So you got over 500,000 quarts of oil that's sitting still in car lots all over the country. That's just sitting there and been sitting up for the past 5 or 10 years because it's not selling. When GM needed a bailout, GM needed the bailout because when they manufactured all them Tahoes and Yukons and Suburbans, when gas prices started to soar up, a lot of people started to turn the ones they had already purchased in. So the series of Yukons, Suburbans, etc., those are like $30,000 to $40,000 trucks, brand new. So around $30,000 to $40,000 trucks, and they expecting it to sell out, and it did not sell. So GM was out of a lot of money. GM was about to go under because all this money that they done invested in these trucks, expecting them to sell, and they didn't, and gas prices started to soar because it takes more money to assemble an SUV than it does a regular car. So that's why GM needed the bailout, because it didn't sell like they thought. So you got roughly, let's say the 20,000 that I calculated. So that's 100,000. Now we're gonna base this one off 6. So that's 120,000. Let's say 20,000 SUVs manufactured a year. So there'll be 120,000 quarts a year being wasted. But let's say 100,000 in all. 20,000 of this 100,000, let's say, is SUVs, and the other, what, 80,000 will be mostly mid-sized cars or mid-sized vehicles and small cars. There will be roughly 500,000 quarts a year. So 500,000 quarts, 120,000 on SUVs, but 100 million cars in operation leads to 500 million quarts a year that's being used, and 500,000 quarts a year that's being wasted off the manufacturing of vehicles that people cannot afford to buy because of a bad economy, because of job losses, but yet they steady bringing out fancy $20,000, $30,000 vehicles, steady bringing out fancy $30,000, $40,000 SUVs that people cannot afford. So you steady wasting quarts of oil, you wasting gallons and barrels of oil through manufacturing vehicles people are not trying to buy and they cannot afford. This is the reason AutoZone is starting to go sky high in profits, because a lot of people trying to keep their old beetle bugs or whatever you want to call them and just trying to make best with what they have, instead of going be quick to go pay a note on something, and they're not guaranteed to have the stable job or have a stable job. So that's why AutoZone making a killing, and AutoZone increasing in its profits, or rather than everywhere else. But the reason I say AutoZone because they have cheaper prices than their competitors. So yeah, and if you look in the stock market, if you look at the U.S. today in the stock section, you will see AutoZone points still increasing, because people saying, you know what, this old 86 I got, this old 97 or whatever I got, I'm just gonna invest in the pods on it instead of me going taking it to a dealer and all that and paying notes and paying insurance. I'll just get this car, have liability on it, put the parts that it needs to keep it running on it, or put a whole new motor in the vehicle for about $1,500 versus paying $22,000 for a new car, when I can pay roughly like around $3,000 for a new car, $1,500 on a motor, $1,500 on a transmission, new car. So that's the reason right there. The reason gas prices are going up so high, because of the oil consumption of this country, the unnecessary oil consumption of this country. So by this country having all this oil usage for no particular reason at all, especially in the manufacturing area of vehicles, yeah, yeah. So because America's irresponsibility to manage oil consumption very well is the reason the East is not so quick to sell America oil at reasonable prices, oil barrel at reasonable prices. Why? Because America, doing this high oil consumption, this high oil usage, is taken away from the East. Because by America being the #1 consumer in the world and being an industrial country, yeah, you can kind of understand why this country uses so much oil. You got all these products coming through here, made in China, made in Taiwan, etc. But see, the manufacturing is overseas. See, the most majority of our manufacturing of what this country does is automobiles. That's the majority of the manufacturing this country does. But when it comes to other things, you know, frivolous items, miscellaneous items like this cup holder here, what it say? Wow, you know, surprisingly, that said made in the USA. But when I look on the back of this stapler right here, it says, well, you really can't see it. Okay, now you can. Made in China. So the majority of everything that's manufactured over here, man, you already know that. But majority we manufacture is cars. That's the only thing that America pretty much manufactures and makes for herself, is her own vehicles. You pretty much don't hear about Chevrolets and all that being made overseas. Pretty much made right here. So But so now by Iran refusing to, of course, have any affiliations with the U.S. because of being allies with Israel, and that's the reason why Iran ain't trying to, cut no side deals with this country. So America getting oil from their normal sources, Saudi Arabia and Iraq right now, and trying to find some over in Libya. But the oil that this country is getting has to be refined, but Iran has some of the purest and richest oil it is on earth. So by having rich and pure oil like the oil that's over there in Iran that doesn't really have to be refined, still leads this country to want to try to overtake Iran because feeling that, hey, this is unfair, you know, they can get so China and Russia and North Korea, they can get so cheap barrels of oil, but we got to get our barrels of oil much higher than theirs. The cost of our barrels that they sell to us is a lot higher and a lot expensive than what they sell to those over there in Asia, or majority of Asia. So of course, U.S. ambassadors, etc., think that's unfair. Why you gotta sell to them so cheap and sell to us so high? And it's been a problem for quite some time. So if America invades Iran and takes over Iran, then these high gas prices we got wouldn't be a problem anymore. You would actually see gas go back down to around $1 and something because you got the richest and finest oil on earth. So it doesn't have to be refined that much. Or some places don't have to be refined at all, just pure. So, but Russia, China, and North Korea is not going to allow that to happen because if America overtakes Iran, that takes away from them. It's like, okay, hold up, you hurting us. What are we going to do for oil? What are we going to do for our industries and our business and our transportation areas if America's in control of all the oil? So that's why Russia, China, and Korea, and quite a few would be so quick to be in alliance with Iran because they know the side deals that they are getting cut with from Iran on their oil. See, this country is the only country that has high gas prices. Over there in Asia and the East, they're not suffering from no high gas prices. Over there, with Europe and Korea, Russia, and China, they are not suffering from high gas prices. It's just over here. And see, that's the problem, folks, that the U.S. ambassadors think is unfair, that the Republicans think is unfair, is that, hey, we got to pay so high while the people over in the East pay so less. Well, maybe they're a lot closer since they like, hey, over in Iran, since we're a lot closer to them and I know them so well, I'm going to cut them a side deal. But see, y'all are Westerners. We are Easterners. See, I'm familiar with them. I roll with them. We all linked on the same continent. But see, over here with you in the West, we don't just know y'all that well. So I guess that's why the premium on the oil going up for the people in the West. The American thing is unfair, so that's why, okay, we'll just go take your stuff. How about that? We'll go take it. But that's the reason why Russia, China, and Korea won't allow it. Because America will be taking food out of their mouths. America will be taking money out of their pockets by overtaking Iran. So this is why they'll be so quick to defend Iran, because they're like, if they hurt Iran, they're going to hurt us. If we allow them to hurt Iran, we're going to allow them to hurt us. And we're not going to let that happen. If they take over the oil, then we got to go through them in order to get oil, and they're going to try to charge us sky high for the oil than what normal price we used to usually pay. Tangle. They're going to try to charge us higher than a normal price we usually pay. So that's why I ain't going to have it. So folks, just thought I'd share that, the revelation on why this country might end up trying to go to war with Iran anyways, because as long as these gas prices continue to put a dent in our pockets and put a dent in this country's economy and put a dent in this country's oil reserves, the only way for survival to keep America going, to keep America lubricated and not dry up, is to go to war with Iran. See, America has been trying to get around it for the longest. That's why I ended up going to Libya, going to Iraq, trying to find oil in different places other than Iran, trying to find other sources. But it seemed like the only choice and source that this country has left is Iran. And they've been wanting to do it for the longest. If you pay attention and watch the movie W, the guy that was playing Cheney, he kind of gave a hint during the Bush administration what they wanted to do. And it was all about oil, all about this empire and having military bases all over the world. I spoke that already in America's Fall and Apocrypha, but you know, having military bases all over the world and trying to go over here to Iran and take their oil, and it would be an empire if America conquers Iran. It would literally be an empire because they'll have the finest oil in the world. This country would. But that's why Russia and China in the East is not going to let that happen. They're not going to let that happen because of America trying to have this sovereignty mentality, this dictator mentality. And that would make America a dictator if America gets a hold of Iran, takes over their oil. This country would be a dictator. And in order to keep their dictatorship, I believe that's why the Republicans want to conquer Iran. Because Iran is starting to develop their dictatorship. Because they have the richest and finest oil on earth. So by Iran starting to take away the dictatorship of America, and America not hardly being as superior anymore because losing respect and values, and Iran is starting to grow in respect and grow in values, since oil is like gold, that makes Iran a rival to America. A rival because these countries get more respect than us. They all starting to look up to Iran, but it's because Iran possesses is their rich oil. So, just sharing revelation, keeping y'all enlightened, keeping y'all, you know what I'm saying, posted as always, and just letting you know what's going on. So, yeah, like I said, meditating the revelation, doing the numbers. This is one particular reason why gas prices are so high. This is because of the annually, yearly consumption of oil. That's around 500 million quarts a year. 500 million quarts a year. Half a billion quarts a year, or if not, a billion quarts a year. If not. Because you got 300 million. 300 million, but see, you can't include the whole 300 million because you got infants, right? You got toddlers in school and children in school that's not old enough to drive yet. But if you base it off 200 million, that's a billion. Or 200 million times 5. You know, let's try that right quick. I mean, well, y'all got calculators. Y'all can sum it up. But I believe that's a billion. Billion quarts a year. So that's pretty much a wrap. I think I, posted my latest vids to keep y'all updated and share revelation. And in the meantime, stay tuned. Hope y'all, still enjoying the videos I'm presenting and hoping this getting y'all a lot of insight. And I know come on here all fancy with, music in the background and back screen backgrounds. I just like to get it to you straight. I like to do my videos as if you sitting right in front of me and we having a conversation where you can connect more on a personal level and get it. So on that, folks, I'll leave it at that. So in the meantime, peace be unto you, of course. Shalom and Christ flight.